Welcome to Cash at College, Spending, Saving, and Student Loans. This is our second summer 2025 webinar for University of Illinois Systems, University Bursar. We're going to be covering a lot of different things today, so I'm going to move kind of quickly through the beginning part of today's webinar slides. My name is Andrew Pellegrini, and I run the Student Money Management Center for all three universities in the University of Illinois system out of University Bursar, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Danny and Abel. Abel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Once again, Abel Cervantes. I'm the collections manager for University of Bursar. I focus on resolving inquiries related to past due balances.
Thank you, Abel. Danny's going to be hanging out in the chat mostly today, but do you want to introduce yourself, Danny, to our participants?
Good afternoon, everyone. Daniel Palayo. I oversee student loans and collections in the accounts receivable team in University Bursar. And like Andrea said, I'll be adding stuff on the chat and also helping with some questions throughout the presentation.
So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to use the chat. We have people monitoring it. Danny, at least one of my student workers, Sahil, is also checking out the chat today. So don't hold your questions till the end. You can go ahead and ask them in the chat. All of our universities rest on the land of multiple Native nations, including the ancestral lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Muscooten, Ottawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. And we have a responsibility to acknowledge these Native nations and to work with them as we move forward as a vibrant and inclusive society. And we like to know who is joining us. So I'm going to attempt to find the polls again. And we want to know a little bit about you. So we have a demographics poll that I'm going to launch once I find it. Ta-da! All right, so a poll should have popped up on your screen. There's some options around age, student status or employment status, gender, ethnicity, race that can help us kind of modify some of our discussion points today if needed. And it helps us kind of see who's joining our webinars, which is really great. So mostly 18 to 24-year-olds, that's traditional college age students, but we have people across most of the age ranges here, all the way up to 74. So we appreciate so many people joining us from all over, either as a student or supporting through being a parent. Pretty equal on gender, so that's great. And if you don't know, there's a submit button probably at the bottom. You can submit. We have a lot of content to go over today, so I'm going to leave it open a couple more seconds, and then I'll end the poll and share the results real quick. Looks like 73% of you have participated so far. All right, we surpassed the 75% mark, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results real quick. As you can see, we have mostly traditional age students, but we don't just cater to traditional age students. We also provide content for parents and families and spouses and grad students and non-traditional students. So regardless of where you're at, we'll hopefully be able to touch on something that's relevant to you today. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that poll. And if it's still up on your screen, you can exit out of it. That's not a problem. And the next poll should pop up for you. So by the end of today's webinar, we will have explored financial planning for college. We're also going to go over a few considerations for choosing a financial institution like a credit union or a bank, where you can get all kinds of financial services. We're also going to discuss credit myths and facts, very high level, because credit is a complicated topic and we can't cover everything in a 1-hour session, let alone part of a 1-hour session. We're also going to highlight a few ways to keep yourself and your information safe, as well as cover some tips to manage financial stress. And I'm going to hand it over to Abel to talk about creating a financial plan. Abel, I can't hear you if you are muted. Am I muted? I think you are muted, Abel.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrea. We're
No
going to talk
problem.
about the process of developing a comprehensive financial plan, which is crucial for managing your money effectively during college. Creating a spending plan can be thought of as piecing together a puzzle. Key steps involving identifying your financial priorities, recognize all resources, setting SMART goals, tracking your progress, and analyzing and reprioritizing your spending as needed. The Student Money Management Center offers additional resources on budgeting and spending plans on their website. Some things to consider in making a spending plan: identify your priorities. Out of your possible expenses, how would you rank them in order of importance and value? This can also relate to your needs and your wants. Also understand what resources are available to you: income from a job, gifts, support from your family, scholarships, housing assistance, healthcare programs, a bus system. All of these things can be used to develop your spending plan. We will also talk about SMART goals here in a little bit, but goal-based financial planning is a lot more effective than focusing on limitations. Also track your progress, evaluate your spending plan on a regular basis. See if you are on target with your spending categories or if you need to adjust to achieve your goals. And lastly, spending plans are meant to be flexible. If you need to readjust your goals or spending plan, you can analyze or readjust your priorities to do so. Now let's take a look at a poll. We mentioned needs and wants in creating a spending plan. Let's get to understand the two terms. We are going to launch a poll.
I just launched it.
Okay, let's start with a basic question. Is pizza a need, want, or think? It depends. Please select what you think is the right answer in the polling box.
I'm not sure if you can see the responses coming in, so I'll describe. We have about 67% of participants that have answered. I think once we get up to 75%, we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Don't forget to hit submit if you need to do that. I don't think you need to on this one though. All right. We'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Can you see them, Abel?
Yes, I can see them.
All right. So let's talk about it.
All right. The correct answer is it depends. Pizza could be a want for a person who decides to adopt a healthier meal plan. However, it could be a need for a diabetic patient whose sugar level is dropping rapidly with no means to stabilize their sugar level other than eating a pizza. We want to highlight that the classification of an expense as a need or want often depends on individual circumstances and choices. While pizza can be a food source, there are often healthier and cheaper alternatives, making it frequently considered a want in a budget. This distinction is fundamental to creating effective spending goals. Let's take a look at needs versus wants. Although everyone's needs and wants will differ depending on your situation, there are a few basics such as food, clothing, and shelter that need to be taken care of. Remember, there will be a lot of temptation to spend while you are in college. So before beginning school, you need to decide what items you will need and what items will fall into the wants category. Once you have established between your needs and wants, you can make sure to budget for the items that you need before making plans to spend on the items that you want. To help you decide on what a need is, think about it like this. A need is something that if you went without it, it could jeopardize your health, safety, or livelihood. For instance, a laptop might be a need for a college student to take notes in class or do assignments, but it may be a want for a retired person. Let's take a look at some of these definitions. Our expenses can be categorized as fixed, flexible, or occasional. Fixed expense is something that constant and is usually associated with a contract, like a cell phone bill. A flexible expense is exactly how it sounds. This type of expense fluctuates over time and is not constant. this could be a great place to cut spending if needed, such as utilities could be based on use or time of the year. An occasional expense usually are the ones that sneak up on you because they happen so irregularly. This could be gifts, study trip, or unexpected trip home. Now that we understand the type of expenses we may encounter, let's play a game. We are going to launch a poll to see if you can define expenses.
So I just launched it, and this one lists several different things as potential expenses that you can clarify as fixed, flexible, or occasional. And they include rent or mortgage, groceries, pet care. There's also, well, it looks like those are the three main ones that we have right now. On another webinar, we test like 7 different ones. So this one's pretty quick. Don't forget to hit submit when you're done making your selections on whether they are fixed, flexible, or occasional.
Let's look at some of those expenses and see what category they fall into. The
Okay.
first being rent or mortgage payments, which are typically fixed expenses because they are based on a contract, providing a consistent financial obligation each period. Next, groceries. Groceries fall under flexible expenses because their costs can vary significantly based on factors like frequency of shopping, quantity purchased, and seasonal prices, allowing for adjustments to manage your spending. Next, we'll take a look at pet care, which illustrates how different components of an expense can fit into various categories. Pet insurance is a fixed expense, while daily needs like food, toys, and treats are flexible expenses. Now let's talk about cost of living. Where you live and lifestyle choices could be big things that contribute to the overall cost of your education. Every country, region, state, and even municipality can differ in how much it costs to live there. For example, the cost of a one-bedroom apartment in the city center in Urbana was $750 in May versus an average cost of over $2,300 for a similar apartment in Chicago. And just because that's the average doesn't mean there will be units available in that price range when you go to sign the lease. Another example of cost of living differences might be the cost of rice, which varies from 70 cents per pound in Urbana versus over $2 per pound in Springfield. Depending on which campus you are planning on attending and what lifestyle choices you make, living expenses can vary significantly from student to student. Your lifestyle choices really dictate how much your living expenses will be. And it's important, particularly if you're borrowing to pay for school, that you live like a student while you're a student so you don't have to live like a student when you graduate. Things you can do to lower your living expenses is to comparison shop or consider getting a roommate to share the cost of rent and utilities. This slide shows how many different flavors of the SMART goal framework that exist out there. Some people identify the letters as referring to different descriptions for goals, so we want to acknowledge that. Choose whichever version of the SMART framework works best for you. To achieve smarter goals, consider when thinking about what you want to achieve. It's always a good idea to visualize and write down your goals using the SMART goal framework method as a way to do this. To achieve your financial and personal goals, it's important to take inventory of your income and resources. Also, align your spending with your priorities and values. You may also want to involve relevant stakeholders in your goal setting process. Write down your SMART goals. Regularly check your progress. And also be prepared to reprioritize your goals when life circumstances or priorities change. Here's an example of how you might break down a SMART goal using specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and timely as your framework. Specific goals should be clear and well defined to facilitate visualization and achievement. Measurable, you need a way to track your progress, whether through tasks completed or amount saved. With money, usually there's a target amount to save or pay down, but it could be a task like to completing the FAFSA as soon as it's available after October 1st. Also, have an agreed upon goal. If your goal relies on others, their agreement is important. If your parents are paying for your tuition, it may be important to agree on what to major in or what portion of your educational expenses can help you cover. Also, make your goals realistic. Consider your current income, your resources, and time to ensure the goal is feasible. Also, make your goals timely. Set a specific date by which you aim to accomplish your goal. According to research, goal setting is an effective behavior change technique with specific, difficult goals leading to higher performance by directing your effort and persistence. There are a lot of general and personal reasons it can be difficult to set or maintain goals, such as inflation, which has a high cost on goods and services, which directly affect us, the consumers. While U.S. annual inflation has slowed down, this can still be a hard adjustment when trying to stay on track on your goals. Student loans, since student loans need to be repaid, it can be difficult to account for them in a family budget. Setting goals can also be difficult due to financial avoidance. Money is one of the top stressors for adults. Financial avoidance is when you ignore our own financial situations for various reasons. We could be avoiding due to anxiety or not knowing enough about a situation. This can be detrimental to making a realistic spending plan that can hurt you in the long run. All of this is to acknowledge that there are real reasons as to why it's difficult to set or maintain financial goals. Financing your degree is about more than just covering tuition. Things like your books, supplies, rent, and utilities, or room and board, travel and living expenses all add to the cost of your degree. So let's talk about how to pay for it and even minimize some of those costs. The main educational expense you will need to account for is your tuition and fees. Your tuition and fees depend on a number of different factors, such as are you full-time, part-time, international student, or out of state, undergraduate or professional? The list goes on and on. Make sure to visit your campus registrar's website to view a tuition and fee schedule for your campus and program. The registrar's office can assist you in finding out how much your tuition and fees will be before they are charged to your student account. We are going to go ahead and put the links to the registrar's website for each campus in the chat box now, and we'll also provide those links after the webinar is over. Other expenses associated with your education can include living expenses, your textbooks, materials for lab classes, or purchasing case studies, and any extra fees or supplies needed for class. You may also want to join a social or professional association, most of which have membership dues or fees. Planning your expenses before you even step foot in a classroom is a great way to be prepared for being a student. If you have moved out on your own already, what are some expenses that surprised you?
So if you want to put in the chat what has surprised you about moving out on your own or even increased costs in the past few years, that'd be really helpful for our students or incoming students that may not have thought about those expenses coming in. So if you want to put that in the chat, that's super helpful for interaction. I think one of the things that I was surprised at when I moved out on my own was how much like cleaning supplies were for my apartment. Making sure that I had toiletries and stuff. I mean, that was a big surprise. In addition to food, but I'd already been paying for some of my food. Abel, what was something that surprised you when you moved out on your own? Abel.
Let's see, some of the commute expenses. Yeah,
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time I was attending school, some of the commute expenses, I didn't plan accordingly. So once I had to account for those expenses, yeah, it caught me off guard.
Yeah, people are saying housing, gas, the increasing cost of housing. Yeah, those are absolutely things that can break your budget. Cost of caring for pets, driving and flying back home. That's really important for people that are moving to a different state or country to come to school. Cost of professional clothing can be quite expensive. Yes. Furniture. All right, keep them coming. Keep those ideas coming. We'll go ahead and move along.
All right. Beyond the obvious, students often face unexpected costs when living independently. These can include healthcare and insurance, phone bills, fees for receiving wire transfers, various taxes, tips for services, and utilities like water and internet. These are just a few costs that some students have been surprised by when moving out on their own. So now that we've gone over some of the costs and expenses, Andrew will go over how to fund for some of those costs and expenses.
Thank you, Abel. So let's talk about the process of funding a degree, if I can get to the right slide here. So obviously there's a lot going on in this slide, but essentially you have to make a plan. You got to prepare. You got to apply for any aid that you might be eligible for, be that through the government or through private scholarships. You have to receive that aid in order to make a kind of plan for anything that you might have to pay out of pocket. So then you have to calculate or estimate the net cost of your degree. That net cost includes you take your financial aid funds minus the tuition and fees that you're going to be charged, and whatever is left over is what you have to pay out of pocket, or your net costs. And there's a lot of calculators out there that can help you with estimating the net cost of just of 1 year or 1 semester in your program or your entire degree. While you're in school, you'll also need to monitor some of your funding streams. That could be requirements for maintaining or reapplying for scholarships or fellowships. It could include maintaining satisfactory academic progress. You can still get federal loans and as well as grants. And you want to track any borrowing that you're doing while you're in school. And then when you leave school, whether that is graduation or you're dropping below half-time status, you will have to repay your loans. So federal loans have a 6-month grace period after leaving school or dropping below half-time status before you have to repay. But there's a lot more information on federal student loans through studentaid.ed.gov. And we also have a whole bunch of student loan information on the Student Money Management Center website. So essentially there are 2 main types of financial aid. There is gift aid and self-help aid. Gift aid includes things like grants, the Illinois MAP grant or the Pell grant that you might have heard of. There's also military and veteran benefits, as well as scholarships or waivers associated with fellowships or graduate assistantships or employment. So that's all gift aid. There's also self-help aid, which includes loans, as well as student employment or federal work study, which we're going to talk about a little bit. It's really important that you remember that the cost of attendance in your financial aid notification or offer is an estimate. The actual cost can vary significantly based on your chosen classes, the housing costs that Abel was kind of going over earlier, and personal lifestyle choices that we were also discussing. So monitoring all these factors is really important for managing your overall college expenses, since it all adds up to that cost of attendance. But again, what's listed on your notification from financial aid is estimated. So keep that in mind. All right, so federal work study, I mentioned earlier, is a program that allows students to earn money to help pay for college or career school. To request it, you must contact your financial aid office, because the processes vary by all of our universities within the University of Illinois system, But if you are trying to decide between U of I and a different school, you'll need to contact financial aid if you think you are eligible for federal work study or should be eligible for federal work study, as they have different processes for putting it on your notification or your offer. Most positions are going to be on campus or associated with campus in some way, and work schedules are generally flexible to accommodate your class schedule because you're a student, right? The university policy for University of Illinois system sets a maximum of 20 hours per week for student work through federal work study positions and 28 hours per week total for student employment in general. So international students are only allowed to work up to 20 hours per week per their visas, and they are not eligible for federal work study benefits since it's for people that are eligible to complete the FAFSA. One thing that I forgot to mention on our previous slide on funding a degree is that if you are a domestic student that is not eligible for completing the FAFSA and you are in Illinois, you live in Illinois and have residence in Illinois, you can complete the RISE Act's alternative application for Illinois student aid. So that's something to keep in mind if you are not eligible and are a Illinois resident for aid. And that's for the Illinois MAP grant. All right. So it is important with federal work study that you know that it is the student's responsibility to find a job, and they can be quite competitive. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have to apply for jobs, you'll have to interview, and then you'll have to be offered the job above other candidates. So there are lots of student employment opportunities on each of the campuses. Each campus has a different way of finding those opportunities and applying to them. Urbana has the virtual job board, and this includes both federal work study positions as well as general student worker positions. Chicago posts all their stuff through Simplicity, which also includes grad hourly, a federal work study positions. And then Springfield has Career Connect, which you can also search for full-time employment opportunities as well as on-campus employment opportunities. So we've shared those in the chat. Thank you, Danny. That's very helpful. Another thing that I want to mention is it's important that graduate students need to be aware that tuition and service fee waivers that are received as a benefit of employment are considered taxable income by the IRS. So specifically, if you have a graduate assistantship or pre-professional graduate assistantship, any amount received over $5,250 per calendar year may be taxable and subject to withholding. So that's $5,250 worth of tuition and service fee waivers. We have a lot more information on our website, the Student Money Management Center website. And we also have a Moodle module on the taxability of tuition waivers. And we're looking to do a webinar in August with a tax professional about this and other taxable funding for schools. So if you want to check that out, make sure to subscribe to our e-newsletters. All right, so it's important that when you are completing your degree and making a plan to complete your degree, you want to try to limit the time it takes you to complete that degree in order to reduce your costs. So obviously, extending your time to complete your degree in 5 years or 6 years can substantially increase the overall direct costs of your education, like tuition and fees and living expenses. But beyond direct costs, there's a potential loss of income for delaying full-time entry into the workforce. So US News produces a whole bunch of reports on the average net cost of study in the United States. And so for in-state students across the US, the average net cost is $11,560. That's where those 4 years of net costs come from. That's $46,000 if you complete in 4 years. But there's an additional, if you take an additional year, that could increase your cost by that $11,560 in tuition and fees, $12,000 in room and board, $5,000 in meals. And then, in addition to that, there's the opportunity cost of delaying entry to the workforce. So, for example, if you're a UIS student, if you complete your degree, you are likely to make about $36,565 on average. So, as you can see, it increases the cost exponentially, not just because of the net costs of in-state tuition and fees, but also the potential loss of income by delaying your entry into the workforce. All right, I'm going to hand it back over to Abel to talk about choosing a financial institution.
Thank you, Andrea. Now that you've gone over the funding, let's take a look at some of the funding sources. We'll start off by asking why you might need a financial institution in the United States. If you want to add some answers there in the chat. So Andrea mentioned earlier, it helps us with interaction and feedback as well. So when choosing a financial institution, what you want to do is consider the practical reasons you might need a bank or a credit union in the US, such as protecting your funds, setting up direct deposit for employment or financial aid, paying university bills easily through ACH or a payment plan, and also accessing cash. These services can help you manage your money more efficiently and conveniently. Now let's compare those institutions as funding sources. Both banks and credit unions are financial institutions that keep your money safe and provide essential services. Banks are typically for profit, may have more physical locations, and often adopt new technology quicker. Deposits in legitimate banks are insured by the FDIC. Credit unions are non-for-profit and member-owned, often offering lower fees and better interest rates. Deposits or credit unions are insured by the National Credit Union Administration, the NCUA. When choosing, consider factors like the cost of services and the availability of convenient mobile apps. Deposit accounts like checking and saving accounts are typically insured up to at least $250,000 per individual. If you buy investment products at a financial institution like bonds, IRAs, or mutual funds, then these are not insured. So make sure you ask the financial institution that you select for information on investment products. Online banks and credit unions are an option to consider. Don't think you have to look for a physical financial institution near campus. Let's look at some of the differences between these institutions a little bit further. Some of the main differences between the bank or credit union. Banks are for profit and credit union are not for profit. And credit unions share profits amongst their stakeholders. Credit unions usually are specific to an industry or an area. They also have fees such as overdraft, statement, return check, out of network, ATM, etc. Also take a look and see the interest rates for saving accounts. Online banking options. What can you do online? What can't you do? Do they have an app? So consider these things when you're selecting a financial institution. Also, what's that institution's location? If you need to make a cash deposit, if you use the ATM a lot. What's that financial institution security look like? Have there been recent breaches? How do they handle their information if it has been stolen? And also see if there are any perks, any extras, any bonus signing, any points to earn, etc. Now, when deciding to open an account in a financial institution, consider whether it's going to be a checking, savings, money market, certificate of deposit. Is it a loan? And also make sure to select a financial institution such as a bank that's FDIC insured, credit union that's NCUA insured, as mentioned earlier. Remember, processes vary by the institution and services also vary. When opening an account, generally you're going to need a social security number or an individual tax ID number, evidence of physical and mailing address, a government issued ID, such as a driver's license or passport. And some institutions will require an initial deposit to open an account. Now let's take a look at a few key myths and facts about credit with Andrew.
Thank you, Abel. So credit is a super complicated topic, and so we're just going to scratch the surface on a few myths and facts that are normally plaguing our students, and even some other adult consumers. So I'm going to try to launch a poll regarding these credit myths or facts. All right, I just launched it. So do you think credit scores and credit reports are the same? Is that a myth or a fact? Credit cards have more legal protection than debit cards. Is that a myth or a fact? Carrying a balance is good for your credit scores. Is that a myth or a fact? Lenders won't approve you for a loan you can't afford. Is that a myth or a fact? And you only have 3 credit scores, 1 for each credit bureau. Is that a myth or a fact? So don't forget to press submit at the end. And to my fellow co-hosts, please don't end the poll prematurely. We had that happen earlier, so I can't track where it happened, but try to avoid the end poll button for now. All right, we have 35% of you have participated, and it is mixed across the board. All right, we got lots of myths and facts for all of these answers. We'll wait until we get to 50%. I know this is you didn't expect to have a pop-up quiz on credit myths and facts, but here we are. Let's see if we can get to 50%. All right, well, we're still moving. Yeah, okay. We've exceeded 50%, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So as you can see, this is all over the place. There's myths and facts on all of these statements, so let's discuss them. All right, so credit myth or fact number 1, credit scores and credit reports are the same. This is a myth. Credit scores are numerical representation of your credit worthiness, while credit reports are detailed records that contain all the data from your financial history that credit scores are based on. So like I said, credit is complicated. We have a lot of resources on the studentmoney.uillinois.edu website, and we produce more every year that you can keep learning about credit because it also changes, which makes it hard to nail down. Credit myth or fact number 2, credit cards have more legal protections than debit cards. This is a fact. So credit cards generally offer more legal protections against fraud and unauthorized charges compared to debit cards, but every lender, creditor will have different policies and procedures for how they deal with fraud or unauthorized charges. So it's just here to note that more legal protection is for credit cards compared to debit cards. All right, credit myth or fact number 3. Carrying a balance is good for your credit scores. This is a myth. So carrying a balance, that means not paying off the full amount that you owe on your credit card each month, will attract interest. So if you don't pay it off every month, it will charge interest. It's not necessarily good for your credit score. So you do not have to pay interest in order to have a higher credit score. On-time payment history is the most important factor in a high credit score. So make sure that you're making payments on time. There are different factors, including credit utilization ratio, which we talk about in other materials on our website, that do negatively impact your credit scores. So just keep that in mind. All right, so credit myth or fact number 4, lenders won't approve you for a loan you can't afford. This is a myth. Lenders do consider risk factors like your existing debt and maybe your credit score or scores, but do not focus on your lifestyle choices. So lenders may approve you for loans that, upon closer examination, could be difficult for you to afford given your financial situation. So it's crucial to assess your own ability to repay before accepting any loan or taking out a credit card. You got to have a plan in place so that you can make sure not to fall into any debt traps. All right, credit myth or fact number 5. You only have 3 scores, credit scores, 1 for each credit bureau. This is a myth. You actually have many different credit scores as various scoring models exist, not just 1 from each of the 3 major credit bureaus. FICO, or the Fair Isaac Corporation, is the most heavily used score system by the lenders in the US, but it uses data from Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax to produce based on a variety of different scoring models. All right, so we have credit myth or fact number 6. Buy now, pay later is a type of installment loan that often isn't reported to the credit bureaus. This is a fact, but it's a little bit mixed. So I believe we took it out of the credit myth or fact quiz today. So we want to go over that FICO, who is the one I just mentioned, is one of the most used credit scoring companies, announced that they will be including buy now, pay later histories in their FICO 10T model, but not all lenders are going to be using that scoring model. In fact, many lenders today are still using FICO 8, which came out in 2009. And FICO is not a company that stores data. So if a company isn't reporting to the credit bureaus like Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, or they only report to one and FICO isn't using the data from that particular company, it still will not be included in a score. So this one is going to be probably changing a lot over the next few months, the next year, and how it factors into credit scoring algorithms, but just keep that in mind. All right, so debit cards and credit cards are processed as credit cards when paying tuition through UiPay. So we need to bring some awareness to convenience fees because it applies to tuition and fees paid for through UiPay. So convenience fees are non-refundable and they differ, and they vary a little bit. Domestic debit or credit cards are going to be charged a convenience fee of 2.5%. If you have an international debit or credit card that you're trying to use, the fee is going to be 4.25%. So instead of using a domestic debit card, use your routing and account number for a US savings or checking account to save money, because those are going to be associated with your bank account. Domestic debit cards are. So in general, you might have perceived that it's safer to use credit cards for online transactions, but it's really important to weigh the cost of those convenience fees. So it might be easier for you to grab your debit card out of your wallet, but it's more important to save $250 just by getting your routing and account number. So if you don't know your routing and account number, you can contact your financial institution, your bank or your credit union. The routing number is typically a public number, so it may actually be listed on your financial institution's website, but it's best to keep your account number secret so you avoid fraud. So that's a little tip that can save you $250 just by paying with your routing account number instead of your debit card. All right, so just to kind of go over very brief summary of the US credit system. There are 3 main credit bureaus in the United States: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Credit can impact your access to financial tools, housing, jobs, and a whole lot of other things. But it can also impact the amount that you're going to pay for financial services, like the interest rates you're going to be charged or any additional fees that you might be charged based on your creditworthiness. Credit scores or ratings associated with your credit worthiness based on the data contained in your credit reports. You can get a copy of your credit reports from each of the credit bureaus at least once per year at annualcreditreport.com. Since the pandemic, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax have started providing weekly free access through annualcreditreport.com to all of your credit reports. But legally, you are entitled to at least one per year, one every 12 months. You can learn a lot more about credit through our Get Savvy webinar series that's posted on YouTube and on our website. And we also have a financial literacy digital badges program that talks about credit quite frequently. So you can enroll in those courses as well. So to protect your financial information, it's pretty important. You want to continue learning about information security and cybersecurity. You want to update all your apps and operating systems so they have the most up-to-date versions so that they have patched any potential security threats. Do not share your personal identifying numbers, your PINs, passwords, IDs, or other types of cards. You want to use multi-factor authentication, also called two-factor authentication, on anything that is important. So it's required on a lot of financial institutions, online banking. It's required in a lot of stuff related to your student account, obviously, as well as even your academics. So keep that in mind. It's for your own protection. You might want to consider using a password manager to simplify storing unique passwords. If you have the same password for everything, you're more likely to have a lot of issues if one gets compromised. So using a password manager can simplify using unique passwords for different types of things that you're trying to log into. And don't save your social security number or card details in an insecure fashion. For example, don't put it in your notes app, even though your phone might be locked. It might be easier to access it there compared to a secure storage or a encrypted password manager. Don't put it in your photos. So we've had people take pictures of their credit or debit cards, and the back end of your photos usually goes to the cloud. If the cloud gets hacked, it's pretty easy now to search through photos to find really personal details like people's credit card, social security number, or debit card information. So keep that in mind. All right, so financial stress is a really pervasive issue for all adults, all adult consumers that make financial decisions, but particularly with college students, it can often affect academic performance as well. So to manage it effectively, you want to have a financial plan and track your spending behaviors, and there's lots of different ways to do that. There is no one size fits all. You want to know your financial priorities and understand your resources. That's why we talked about assessing all your different income sources and resources, as well as defining your needs and your wants. Don't avoid any financial issues. So a lot of people might use avoidance as a coping strategy, and that can work for some things temporarily, but it typically will get worse with financial issues. So you want to try to get a plan in place, or at least look at it and assess what you need to do to take care of financial issues. You want to be flexible with your plan and practice healthy coping skills. This can help you not just in your financial life, but also your academic life and personal life. Learning those healthy coping skills can really help you long-term too. And you might want to consider watching the Money, Stress, and Bad Habits webinar that we have on YouTube, and we've repurposed into a self-paced module in our spend course. You want to check that out. All right, so this is a big transition. This is a big transition for your family, for you as a student, for you as a parent. So when you're thinking about planning for financial transitions, it's really important that you set and reevaluate your financial goals early in this transition. You want to analyze potential changes in your spending behaviors. It's very common to see a lot of shifts in your behaviors that impact your budget and your financial plan during times of transition, not just with academia, going to school, even just moving to a different apartment or moving to a different state. All of those things can impact your behaviors. You also want to create a detailed plan for both your priorities and potential new spending habits. You want to regularly track your expenses and adjust the plan if necessary. And you want to discuss your plan and your progress and any new spending habits regularly with relevant parties. So one of the things we talked about with SMART goals was agreed upon. So if you are working with someone else to accomplish your academic goals or to manage a family budget, it's important to regularly discuss, especially during times of transition, what things are going on that impact your progress towards your goals and might inhibit new spending habits or make you take on new spending habits. All right, so University Bursar can help in a wide variety of ways. We have lots of resources to support students and their families. Customer service can assist with questions about your UiPay student account or billing. Student loans and collections can provide support regarding institutional loans, or if your account goes into collections. The Student Money Management Center offers general money management guidance and financial education, like what you're participating in today. And you can also use the University of Bursar's self-help tools. We have websites, obviously paymybill.uillinois.edu is more geared towards customer service and student loans and collections. We also have studentmoney.uillinois.edu for more financial education. There's also a knowledge base where you can get answers to lots of frequently asked questions. And in the fall, we are hoping to have a Bursar bot on the website to also address frequently asked questions a little bit faster. All right, just to summarize some of our key takeaways. You want to create a robust plan for your college costs, including contingencies for unexpected expenses. Diversify your funding sources to mitigate financial risks. That means not just using loans, but looking for scholarships, looking for employment opportunities, looking at leveraging existing employment benefits or other things that you have at your disposal. You want to continuously educate yourself about personal finance, especially credit, as it is a super complex topic and continues to change every few years. You want to learn and practice coping skills for both financial and other forms of stress. There's lots of types of stress out there, which we talked about in our Money, Stress, and Bad Habits webinar that's on YouTube as well. And remember that University Bursar is available to help you with all kinds of student account related questions. But there are a lot of other units across all of the universities that are geared towards helping students and their families navigate this transition. If you can complete our post-webinar survey, that can help us improve. We had some technical glitches this time and last time, but we're hoping those get better every time that we do these webinars. But if you can give us any feedback, that will help us improve for next time. We also have lots and lots of other webinar topics on our YouTube channel. So I talked about money, stress, and bad habits a lot. But we also did one on money and happiness. We did one on stages of change. We have several on budgeting, and we're going to be producing a lot more this academic year. And let's talk about questions. I know that there were a couple questions that I saw in the chat. There was one, Danny, were you tracking them? Maybe I should just start there.
So the one that's come up, Andrea, was about student employment.
Okay.
But we do have someone, they're not a US resident or US citizen. They would just like to move to the US and study in town. What options do we recommend?
International students, their employment opportunities depend on their visa status. So most students have a visa status, and most international students come with a visa status that allows them to work in on-campus jobs up to 20 hours per week. That could be an assistantship, that could be a grad hourly. It really depends on your program type as to what is most accessible to you. So that's a complicated question, but typically you can work when you're on campus, but you're limited by whatever your visa status is.
Thanks, Andrea. Another one that came up, are there taxes associated with fellowships?
So we can't provide advice on finances in general and tax specifically, but typically the way that the IRS code works is that if you receive any fellowships, any amount that's not used for a qualifying expense is considered taxable. Fellowships have withholding done on them. Certain aspects of fellowships have withholding done on them if you receive part of it as a stipend and you're an international student. If you're a domestic student, no withholding is done on it, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a tax liability when you go to file. We have a lot more information that we're planning to put in our August Get Savvy webinar on tax liabilities and tax planning that is specific to students. So I would suggest that you register or subscribe to our e-newsletters. So as soon as the registration is up, that will go out on our e-news listserv.
Thanks, Andrea. And then someone asked a question about paying via direct deposit if there's a university account. So for that one, I was just going to say that, when you log into your student account, you will be able to see your quick pay access. And yes, if you set up your direct deposit information, you can pay the university via direct deposit on there.
We tend to refer to it as e-check on the website. So e-check, ACH, direct deposit, they're all referring to a US transfer of funds from a checking or savings account to a different account, like the university's account. But there's an online portal, the UI Pay portal that Danny was just talking about. I think it's called e-check in the portal.
Thanks, Andrea. And then Andrea, just to follow up on the one where we were talking about international student work. They stated they are a Canadian citizen and do not need a visa.
To work on campus or
So
just to come here?
No, I think they're stating that like how would it work for Canadian citizens to work here?
That's the newest one I've ever heard.
Okay.
I've been here 15 years and no Canadian students have asked me that.
I'm assuming that's what Seema asked. I could be wrong with Seema if you want to clarify if that's what you were saying. And someone did say that they have someone coming to college and need some assistance. I think we need more information on that, don't we, Andrea? Because we're not sure what kind of assistance they're referring to.
Yeah. There's so many different offices at the university that have a hand in financial processes or, what the context of the need is that we can't refer with. It's very broad. I don't think we can refer with that information.
Yeah. And more payment questions. Can I pay the UI Pay payment plan with an international card?
As far as I know, you can only sign up for a payment plan with direct deposit. Can you do a card now? I don't think it's international. Danny, this seems like a you question. You're the boss.
I was asking you first to try to get you first. But that is correct. We are unable to set up payment plans with international cards. So it would just be one-time international payments. You can reach out to our customer service team and they can provide you more information.
Yeah, the customer service team is very good at answering very specific questions regarding payments.
And now we have another payment one on a 529 plan. It depends on the 529 plan. So you'd have to check how the plan pays the university so you can have a better idea how that process works.
So just to give some context to 529 plans, I kind of skipped over that in the funding process slide. So 529 plans are a specific type of savings vehicle that you can leverage to get some tax planning benefits as well as some, receiving benefits when you go to pay for education. But there are many different 529 plans that you can use. And so you have to reach out to your 529 plan vendor basically to see what their process is for paying fees to the university.
And Andrew, someone did ask if we have recommendations regarding student loan options.
We do not have recommendations that would be considered financial advice, but in general, I can say a few things regarding student loans. Federal student loans are going to provide better terms for most students and families compared to private loans. That's not always the case across the board, which makes it kind of challenging. The other thing that's challenging about student loans in general is you don't know what your life is going to be like when you leave school. So you don't know what your income potential is going to be typically, or what your career options are going to be typically, or your employment kind of situation. And so federal student loans, I know there's been a lot in the media recently about some of the back end chaos. Federal student loans still offer the most repayment benefits compared to other student loans, private student loans. You have more protections with federal student loans than you do with private student loans, but not every family is the same. And so private student loans have a lot of other considerations when you go to compare them. And so we're going to be doing a lot more education around private student loans this upcoming year, this academic year, because of all the changes that are related to some of what you may have seen in the media. So we have a lot more information on our website, and we're going to be updating some of our existing materials to better address student loan education in general.
And Andrew, I wanted to ask if you're familiar with Wise. Someone put it on the chat as a multi-currency account, which may be useful for online students living outside the US. Are you familiar with that?
I know that Wise is a payment transfer option. I do not know much about it. So I don't know what protections exist since it's international. It's very new. So there could be it's a gray area as to what regulations are they subject to and what protections exist for consumers since they're multinational.
Thanks,
So
Andrea.
my suggestion is to use with caution if you do want to use it.
And then on our website, just to follow up on that, we do have 3 partners that we do partner with regarding international payments. So that's something that can be viewed on our website. Let's see what else we have.
There's a lot of good questions, it looks like. Which one's the
Andrea, someone feels that they've been trying to keep an eye for graduate positions, but feel like they've been missing out. Is there anywhere we recommend that they look for open positions for graduate positions?
I think stay in contact with your college or department. They're going to have the types of positions that they will post or that will be available will be most relevant to your experience. Broadly, Urbana has the Assistantship Clearinghouse, which they're only going to post when it's very broadly open to all students, so it's highly competitive. I think there's a similar assistantship page in UIC, and then Springfield has a different process where you apply to any open ones, and then it's on at least if they're still doing it this way, it's on the employing unit to search through all of the different applications through that portal and search for which ones are most relevant to their particular unit.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Andrea.
that's clear as mud.
Someone did ask about having a 529 pay a portion and if the rest can be in a payment plan. The answer to that is yes. When you set up your payment plan with the university, just set it up for the amount that you know your 529 is not going to cover. But also, like I mentioned earlier, just keep track on when those funds are going to post on your account from your 529.
And
Andrea, can an international student open a bank account in the US without SSN?
yes, you have to apply for what's called an individual tax ID number, ITIN. And from what I understand, it can take 9 to 11 weeks to process that. Most of the financial institutions around at least Urbana and Chicago's campuses will help you complete that paperwork. But I don't know what their individual processes are for allowing you to make a deposit. I don't know if they have a system in place where they can take your deposit and then wait until you have an ITIN to apply it into that account or allow you to use that account, or if they have a different process. So you might have to ask around. We have,
And that was one of the links you gave, right, Andrea, that we put on the
yes,
chat?
yes. So we just wrote an article on how to open a bank account in the US, and it includes how to get an ITIN.
So for anyone who missed that one, we did put those links in the chat, but they're also going to be provided to everyone who signed up to the webinar with all the links that we put in the chat.
Mm-hmm. And I'll try to get that out either today or tomorrow.
And someone's asking bank partnership recommendation. I think we did offer in a link some of the ones close to the university. I think that's the most we do, right, Andrea? We don't really recommend.
Yeah, because we don't know what your individual situation is, what your individual financial services needs are, but that's why we do the education on kind of listing typical questions that you might want to ask a financial institution or what to consider and the differences between banks and credit unions and what services that you might need out of them.
One other question, how to set up automatic payment if I get money from federal loan?
Okay, so if you receive a federal loan and you are enrolled at least part-time, you will not be able to set up automatic payments towards your federal loan until you are considered out of deferment. So you're an in-school deferment as long as you are registered at least part-time at any of our universities. This is something that, as far as I know, none of the federal loan servicers have an option where you can bypass that deferment and set up automatic payments. You will be able to set up automatic payments when you are in active repayment for a federal loan.
International student asking on how they get a financial aid advisor.
So we have some information on how to choose a financial professional. If you have financial aid that you're receiving through the university, like you have received a financial aid notification, you would want to reach out to the financial aid office at that university. We're not financial aid, so they have different ways of processing questions about financial aid notifications and processes, including for some international students that receive institutional aid.
Students asking how they can apply for a credit card.
So this one's complicated. You can apply to lots of different credit cards at one time and kind of compare them. Every institution or creditor is going to have different processes. Most of the time there's some type of application. When it comes to trying to minimize the negative impact on your credit worthiness, you can apply for multiple in a short time frame. So you don't want to apply for a credit card once a month for 6 months. That's a lot of negative dings on your credit history. But if you apply for, 6 in a 3-day period, they know that you're going to be comparing those and then taking out what you want based on what's offered to you. if you don't have any credit whatsoever, it might actually be easier to piggyback off of a family member who has good credit. The thing is, if you piggyback off of someone who has poor credit, you're going to have that put on your credit history. So be mindful if you are wanting to be listed as a credit card holder on someone else's account. That's called piggybacking. In order to establish credit, you just want to know how good they are with their managing their credit responsibilities. If you want to do that, it can be difficult to establish credit without a credit card, but it can also be hard to get a credit card without having established credit history. So there's other ways to get around it. We talk much more in depth in some of our credit oriented webinars. They're on YouTube as well as on our website. We have a lot of questions today.
Last one, Andrea. Do I need to open an American bank account as an international student to use the student account to make payments?
No, you can do wire transfer through those 3 vendors that Danny was talking about. But typically the least amount of fees are going to be available through transferring from a US bank account, like a savings or credit or checking account, and paying by e-check. But there's lots of different ways to make a payment to your student account.
And that's pretty much it. Someone just talked a little bit more about WISE, which I already mentioned to you, but that was all the questions.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to try to package up, we'll put this recording out just to those that registered for this particular webinar, but we also have some additional information that can answer some of the questions in more depth that we got today. And I'll try to get that out either today or tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. We're going to start moving people into the waiting room so we can debrief on our webinar for improvements. Okay.
Okay.